Hi, guys, and welcome back to Insecure, Inadequate, and Overwhelmed. My name is Emily Lamb, and thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Just to start with that, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Just to start jumping in, I feel like I haven't recorded a podcast in 10 years. I know it's only been 2 weeks since I recorded one, but I was getting ready for this today, and I was like, why? I haven't recorded in 6 years. What am I even doing? And it's only been the same amount of time. I feel like I've lived 7 lives in the last 2 weeks. We went to summer camp. That was so fun. Christian and I got to go to summer camp this year with our church as activities directors, which was a great time. We've never done that before. I've been to the summer camp one time before I took this role, and it was a great time. It was really fun. I'm super thankful God keeps giving us opportunities like that and just to step into new roles and do things, especially stuff that I don't feel like I am prepared for at all. It was definitely a time of feeling really inadequate as it went on, just because am I giving enough points? Am I doing enough stuff? Are we giving people cheer points? If people cheered, we gave points out crazy, and it was fine. And then we were super on it. The games are super intense sometimes, and we're super on it about cheating because whenever I was in high school and anytime we went to summer camp, my team always lost. It was fine. But there's this one team that always won. And I'm 85% sure they were cheating. So anytime we saw it, I was do it again because we're not playing this game. Also, they asked 2 of the most unathletic people ever to be activities directors, which is so funny to me. So funny because Christian and I just watch TikToks and hang out in our house and do computer stuff. And they're yeah, run these activities. It went really well. It was super fun. We had such a good time. We were so thankful that we got to do that. So much fun. 10 out of 10. Would recommend summer camp to anyone. But yeah, and then the last week was just normal week. Got back into work. I took vacation to go to summer camp. Got back into work, went in, and I was I do not want to go to work, but I wanted to have a good attitude. I just came back from camp. I saw God work in the lives of students, and I'm gotta work in my life. So I came in, and this week went by really fast. It was just a good week. I just had a good attitude. I did my devos in the morning, and I was this is just good days. The last 2 days were weird, super weird. I don't know if it's this heat wave or what, but super weird. But it was awesome. So that's just a little recap of my last 2 weeks. I know it doesn't seem like I really did a lot, and I didn't, but I really do feel like I've lived 10 lives. But it's okay. It was a good time. It was a good time. And now summer camp feels like it was forever ago. But so as I was praying and talking and thinking through what do I want this week's podcast to be, I have this list on my phone of things I do want to talk about, and they're getting into different things. And what I really wanted to step into this first one was some of my biggest insecurities throughout my life. Since it's called Insecure, Inadequate, and Overwhelmed, let's just jump right in. And I want to talk through some of the insecurities I had, just in the different seasons I've had in my 22 years. I know it's not a lot. I'm still pretty young, but I just want to jump into this is what's gone on. This is how I felt in these seasons and stuff like that. So I'm going to talk about what have I let hold me back the most in my 22 years? When I was a kid, pretty normal, pretty outgoing, whatevs. It wasn't even when I was thinking about this, I was there wasn't really anything I really can remember being super insecure about as a kid. What I think about when I think of junior high and early high school, I think my biggest, I've always wanted to be liked, and I was never popular, never anything like that. Pretty much just a weird kid, which is totally fine. I was okay with it now, and now I'm glad I was that kid because you grow in those ones go into so much. Never judge a book by its cover. They may be a little weird when they're in school, but they get better. You know what I'm saying? I feel like I got better. It gets better. Those are people that that's, you know what I mean. You know what I'm saying? But I think the biggest thing I had insecurities about, and I know it's going to sound cheesy, but when I was in junior high and high school, I was really kind of insecure about my weight. And I still am, if I'm being really honest with you. But I feel that was the biggest insecurity in that season. And I let it hold me back from a lot of things, especially since I just talked about summer camp. I let my weight hold me back at summer camp a lot. I was I can't play the games. I can't do that. I'm not strong. I'm not fast. I'm a little chubby. I can't do these things. And I wasn't even looking back at photos, it wasn't awful, but I just let it hold me back from everything. I have this really distinct memory of I was a kid and we had this I went to the small church. And like we had this, like, there's this rodeo Bible thing that happened at our town. And the guy always came and spoke at our church, and he like brought his horse, and all the kids got to get on the horse and go for a ride. But I was like, I'd always told myself I was so weak, and I was like, I can't pull myself up there. And so I didn't. And everyone just stared at me because I couldn't pull myself up there. Like I wasn't strong. I was a little like I was just like, I had no upper body strength. And everybody just kind of looked at me. And finally the guy was like, I don't really know how to help you. And I was like, And so finally we got it figured out, and I got up there, and I thought my mom was going to have to come help me get on the horse. And I was like, I'm embarrassed. So that is it. Like my strength, my weight, like that throughout high school and junior high and like that type of stuff, elementary school, that was like probably my biggest insecurity. That's like, I let it hold me back from a lot of things. I didn't really like to go swimming. Like buying clothes was always weird for me. I don't know why I was so weird about it. Buying clothes is still weird for me now. I'm so odd, so weird all the time. It's fine. And in high school though, I did do martial arts. I know you'd be like, what? I started martial arts when I was in high school just because I wanted to I wanted to lose weight. And so I was in my room watching this thing about Jillian Michaels, and they're like, how did you get this weight? She's like, I was chubby in high school, and then I started doing martial arts, and then she lost a bunch of weight. Like, that's how she got fit. Now she's like this incredible trainer. And I was like, I literally walked out of my room and I was like, Mom, Dad, I need to sign up for martial arts. And they were like, sure, go ahead. Well, we'd like that. And so I signed up. They signed me up for martial arts. I did it. It was awesome. I was training like 8 hours a week. I was getting really good at it. It was awesome. I had a really great time. And I ended up losing a lot of weight in that season. And I got more confidence, and like I was stronger and that type of stuff. And it was super awesome. So that did kind of change as I was going through high school. And then that's kind of when I started taking more ownership of my health, because I was so insecure about it in that time. And I don't want to fully go into like a health thing, but like that was that season of high school. Like I would say that was part of like my later high school years and early college. So like when I'm 18, 19 years old, that like little gap, I guess kind of a big gap. I don't know. That season I was also kind of insecure about praying out loud was a big one for me. And even in small group discussions, just talking about like what God was doing in my life and that type of thing, which sounds weird. And it's not that like I didn't have a good relationship with God, because I've known God. I've always been a Christian. And as I was taking ownership of my faith, I was just so worried about what everyone was going to think of me. I was so worried about like, am I saying the right things? Are they not going to believe me? Are they going to think I'm just saying things? So I just didn't say anything. And even in my small group in college, I would not say a lot. And this is just like peers and that type of stuff. I wouldn't say a lot in the discussion unless I was like called out, and then I'd try to like chime in. And like that continued on. And then there was even in my college life group, I remember sitting there, and we were around like a lot of strangers, me and Christian and our best friend in high school. Her name was Carrie. We were all into this small group. And I remember the first day I was like, we don't have friends, so we're coming, which was totally fine. They were super embarrassed and mad I said that, but whatever. So in that group, we would pray. And so someone would give a prayer request, and the small group leader would be like, hey, and ask somebody else in the room to pray for it, like right on the spot. So every prayer request was getting prayed for. It was so cool. And every time he'd look at me for the same girl's prayer request, he would look at me and say, can you pray for her prayer request? And I said no every single time. This was like 4 years ago. I would just say no every single time he asked me to pray. I didn't pray until the last small group of the year. That was the only time I prayed in that group, which was, I don't know why. I just would not pray in front of that group. I don't know if I was just too worried about it. I mean, I was too insecure, and I just like, they're going to think I'm bad at praying, so I'm not going to pray out loud, which is so like, I think about it. I'm super embarrassed about it now that like I'm in, like whenever we were youth pastors and stuff, teaching kids how to pray and wanting them to pray. And I would pray out loud, like if somebody was leading the prayer, then everyone prays out loud and then end it, because that's how I learned how to pray in high school, like that in a group. And those I would pray out loud. But if it's just me talking, I would get really worried about what everyone was going to hear me say, and if I was going to say something wrong or stumble over my words. So I wouldn't. And I'd be like, please, please, please do not pick me for this role. I do not want to open the prayer. I do not want to close the prayer. And so I would just always say no. And in that season too, I started leading in a like high school, junior high group for small groups. We called them life groups. And there I would pray because I had to pray and I felt like I wanted to. But if it was like my peers, we are equals, I was so scared. And I just said no. Like, now I think about that's more embarrassing than just praying and saying the words. Like, why was I thinking that? What was I doing? It's fine. But in that season, like, that was a really big insecurity for me. Just like that praying season. And it got better. And talking in groups did get better, which is good. When we transitioned out of that group, we joined another one at our first church that was just Christian and I. We moved to the suburbs in that small group. I stopped talking. I would try to chime in, like, because I'm like trying to grow myself. And Christian would say something and they'd be like, that's so good. That's so right. That's so good. And then I'd say something and they'd look at me and go like, okay, that was a little knock to the confidence because I was trying. But other than that, it's okay. It's okay. We're growing. I talk in small group now. I actually lead a young adult small group now, which is super awesome. And then even there, I'm kind of insecure because I'm like, they give a response and everyone else chimes in discussion, which is what you want in a small group. But I'm like, I don't know how to respond. Lord, please give me words. And somebody else chimes in and I'm like, that's good. People are so good. Team effort. Shout out to my young adult small group. So yeah, that was like the college-y time, like just getting involved in church and that type of stuff. Like I feel like that was my biggest insecurity in that season, was just praying out loud, talking in front of my peers about stuff God was doing, just because I was afraid of what people would think of me. And it was a safe place. I don't know why I was so worried about that in that season. After that role is whenever Christian and I got married, and he took a job as a youth pastor in the northwest suburbs. So we were serving in that role, and I was serving alongside of him. And that was a position God opens the door. Everything I've done, everywhere I've been, God has opened that door, whether I've been felt ready or not, which is the case for most people. But that one was something that I was always like, I am not fit for this position. I felt super inadequate because it's like, why am I here? God, what do you want to do? And that's what I had to ask myself, was like, God, what do you want to do? What do you want for this season? Because there were times like, I was like, am I praying enough? Like, am I building my relationship with God? Am I praying? Am I doing this? Like, my whole life I've grown up in church, and these pastors' wives are like, I spend these hours in prayer. I spend this time talking with God. And I'm like, am I doing that? Am I being a part of that? Or am I the role as a youth pastor? I was 20 years old. So a couple of the girls in the youth ministry we're serving in were 2 years younger than me, which is kind of wild. And it was like, am I being their friend too much? That was one thing that I like was trying to toe that line. Like, I want to be a safe place. I want to be a friend, but I also need to have that respect of a leader. That way we can have these boundaries. You know what I mean? Because they're not the same as being a friend, but you still want to be a friend to them. It's like there's a fine line to toe there, and you have to be really careful. And I was always worried, like, am I telling them too much? Am I sharing too much? Is this a safe situation to share this in? And then especially in that situation, like when they're friends, if one of them tells you something, the other one tells you something, they get mad at each other. There's such a fine line there you have to toe, and like not saying too much about who said this, and being in ministry. There's so much in that area that just needs finesse. And I was like, I don't have finesse. I don't have anything. I don't know what's going on. I think, since we were the youth pastors, we were younger than the rest of the youth volunteers and most of the church. We were very young, and which was super cool. Like, God provided in every situation and he made a way, but it was, does anyone actually respect what we're doing, or do they think we're just kids? Because, I mean, I wonder if I would have thought that. Like, they're not in the same thing. They haven't been in the same situations we have. So do they think I'm just a kid? Like, not knowing, like, does anyone actually respect what we're doing, think we know what we're doing, or they just have us here, like, filling in? You know what I mean? It was a weird line. Something we dealt with more than I thought we would. It's not that we didn't think we would deal with them, but like really tough questions kids were asking and dealing with was, well, I know what to do when they ask those tough questions. Like, have I spent enough time in prayer and in the Bible to step into answering those questions that those kids have about their life? Or What do I tell their parents if it's something too much? Like, where's that line? How much is too much information they're sharing, and like that type of stuff. And the really tough one was like when big and kind of terrible things happen, did we respond in the right way? Like, this was the first time, there were situations, this was the first time we've ever dealt with them. Like, am I responding in the right way? Am I still showing grace, but still drawing a line? And that was the hard part for me, was like, how, like, am I giving grace? Am I drawing the line? Am I giving too much grace because we're so close in age? Or am I going to have a hard time getting over it? Because I'm still young. I'm still young. But in that time, I was like, I'm still young. I don't know. Sometimes like it's easy for us to like hold grudges as people. Like, as we're maturing, we don't realize it. And we're holding these grudges and holding on to things. And we're not just letting, like, forgiving. And I was really worried about that, because sometimes people can be really mean, and we want to harbor that, like, that anger. And that's something that I always really want to do, is harbor anger, because I don't want to, like, I don't want to forgive. But then God's like, you got to grace and you've got to forgive. And that was an area like I needed to be grown in that season, because I was like, am I giving enough grace? Am I still holding a grudge? Where's this line now that trust has been broken? And things like that I was dealing with in that season. So that was some of my biggest insecurities. I, like, in those roles. And now, stuff that I deal with, like, now is just, like, insecurity dealing with what I want to do with my life. Like, I get asked all the time, what do you want to do? What college do you want to go to? What do you want to go to college for? And that is something I've been insecure about since I graduated, because I've never been able to commit. I've said different things. Like, there was a season I wanted to be a teacher. Started volunteering kids, did not want to be a teacher. I wanted to help. I wanted to be a nonprofit business. And I still, like, I'm towing that line. Like, do I want to be a nonprofit business? Like, go to school for that? Do I want to go to school for ministry? Do I want to go to school for all these different things? But I'm so afraid to commit to going to school for something, because honestly, I'm so afraid of debt. And not using my degree is part of that, like, insecurity. And so I get worried about, like, not knowing exactly what I want to do, not knowing what I want to go back to college for, not knowing how to navigate that. And last year, at the beginning of 2018, I just prayed with God. And when that new year started, I came to peace with probably not going back to school. Like, I talked with God, and we just came to this piece. Like, he put a piece in my heart, like, I may not go to school, and that's okay. Because I used to always try to make an excuse, is like, oh, I'm going to go back then, and I'm going to go back for this, and I might do this, and I might do that, and I don't know. And so that was part of that. It's like, I came to peace with that, is I probably won't go back to school. Do I always say that to people, depending on the person? No. Sometimes I want to make myself sound a lot better, and which is human. Okay, I'm honest. Sometimes I like to make myself sound better than I am. It's not lying. It's not that I'm lying. I just am not being real. Like, because I wouldn't mind going back to school if I knew I was going to be using my degree. But now so much doesn't need it. They want the degree. And that's where I'm trying to, like, navigate. Do I want to pay $30,000 for this degree I might use, but I also might not use, and knowing exactly what I want to do with it? That's something that I've been, like, trying to navigate. And one of my biggest insecurities as a 22-year-old, especially living in the college town we live in now, it's not big, but anytime I go anywhere, they're like, are you a student at Eastern? And I'm like, no. Oh, you graduated? No. Oh, why are you here? And I'm like, because. And literally every day people ask, what brings you to Charleston? Is it college? And I'm like, no. My husband's a pastor. And that's, like, kind of how I navigate. Then they change the subject and move on to things. So that's like what I'm navigating now. I get worried about how I am as a dog parent, because I feel like I talk about this often, but my dog is just, I'm not great at training him, and we're working on it. He's come so far, even in the last month. I'm very proud of him. He's a great pup, but he's still not fully potty trained, and he's one. That is one of my biggest insecurities ever. Anytime people ask, I'm just like, I don't want to talk about my dog, please, because I feel like I am flawed in this whole thing. It's so hard. And I do have a lot of insecurities as a wife, but I'm not going to jump into those in this episode just because I want to look into that a little bit more and like talk about it more thoroughly. And just how I felt over, because we'll be married for 2 years this September, and like how I felt in this first 2 years, and just kind of think over that more and chew on it a little bit. Just an odd frame. Chew on it. My foot just fell asleep. Just so you guys know, my foot is asleep. So that's a lot of stuff. So those are a lot of my insecurities that I've been dealing with. I don't know what you would call my biggest insecurity. My most consistent insecurity, I think, has always been my weight, which is a norm for a lot of people. Not where I want to be. My weight's fluctuated a lot, like a lot more than I would have wanted it to in the last couple years, which is kind of hard for me to think about sometimes because I'd come so far and I was doing so well. And I could think back on different seasons when I was super healthy and I'm like, why couldn't I just keep that going? But it's different things. I'm not like blaming myself anymore. But that's something I have to continually work on, like making progress, falling back. And I just get so stressed about it. But I'm working on it. Like I said in the last one, I'm like working on health, doing really well. Camp food messed me up though. Like I came back from camp and I'm like, I never want potatoes again. Because it was just like different types of weird fried potatoes, which is fine. But camp food, hard pass on the camp food. So I'm working on that. Something I'm always working on. It's been my most consistent insecurity, but it's also one that we're growing in. We're working on. I do pray in front of people now and talk in front of people about God. I've even preached a sermon in the role as when we were in the youth pastor position, which was super cool. I feel really good about that. The second one was better, but like God really pushed me out of my comfort zone in that. And he still is. And it's so cool how like he just gives you opportunities. Like if you just let God move, even if you're not ready. And that is something God's shown me countless times, and just reminding me who he is, because he's given us opportunities and open doors that I have no business being in. We've done social media for events and taken photos, and I'm like, I have no business being here in this position. And God has opened doors beyond whatever I could imagine just to grow me. And the activities directors of camp, I had no business being in that position. There's different things that have happened, and God's just opened these doors, and I'm like, I have no business leading. I have no business doing this because I'm definitely not there where I need to be for those roles. And God just opens it, and he grows, and he'll grow you. He grows me in every season, even when I feel like kind of far from God. I know he's always there, but sometimes, there's seasons where you're just not fully into your Bible reading, not fully into your devotional time. And he's still there and shows up every time, which is so mind-boggling to me how good God is about things like that. He's just the best. It's so cool. So those are like my biggest insecurities the last 22 years. Hopefully you guys can relate. I hope you can. I want to hear about some of your insecurities. I want to talk about them. Send me a DM. You can follow me on all my social medias. I don't really have a lot. It's just Instagram and Facebook. I have a Twitter, but I don't use it. But on Instagram, it's Emily A. Lamb. Send me a DM. I want to talk about like insecurities. If you have any questions about what I've had, if you're in any of those situations, I want to talk. I want to get to know you. There's strength in like relating to people and having those conversations, especially if you are young and in youth ministry. Like I want to talk. I want to have those conversations with you, because that's a hard role. That's a hard place to be. Or young person in ministry, 20 years old and in full-time ministry is wild. And that's something you don't want to navigate alone. And that's part of my heart. It's like, I want to talk about that with you and just have that discussion. So if you like have any questions or you want to talk, DM me on Instagram. That's probably the quickest way. Or on Facebook is Emily Lamb. I want to talk through those things with you. In regards to the challenge I put on the last podcast about doing everything as soon as it needs to be done, did really well at camp at that. Came back. The Saturday after camp basically died a little bit. My headache finally went away at like 11:30 p.m. when I went to bed. Great. I took like 4 naps that day. It was really like a weird day. But so far, it went really well. I really enjoyed just getting things done. I feel like I made a better person. The second week, I didn't do such a hot job, but it has been better. I'm working on it. Very much so. But thank you guys again so much for listening. Thank you so much for tuning into this. Leave a comment if you like. Please rate this podcast. That would be amazing. If you really did enjoy it, share with somebody you know. That would be amazing. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to this. Thank you so much. All right. Have a good week, guys.